Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Firstly, I wish you all personal safety in these very troubled times and for your family and your loved ones. Let me start with some home thoughts. There's a gentleman called Asif Kapadia who's a film director, and my favorite film of his is called The Warrior. If you ever find it, it's just incredible. Do watch it. Based in Rajasthan in India. But he's done a documentary about Diego Maradona for Channel 4. Maradona movie, rebel, hero, hustler. And if you get a chance, do watch it. He's an extraordinary film director. I live on the outskirts of Nairobi, and once upon a time it was a coffee farm before the city expanded, and over time the farm was converted into homes. And now my neighbours have all departed because most of them were expatriates. And it's very Napoleon, particularly at night. Going home at night, it was often that I was on the river at night. I never liked it. I never felt in control. In the darkness of river and forest, you could be sure only of what you could see. And even on a moonlit night, you couldn't see much. When you made a noise, dipped a paddle in the water, you heard yourself as though you were another person. The river and the forest were like presences and much more powerful than you. You felt unprotected, an intruder. You felt the land taking you back to something that was familiar, something you had known at some time but had forgotten or ignored, but which was always there. You felt the land taking you back to what was there 100 years ago, to what had been there always. Vias Naipaul, a bend in the river. It certainly feels like that here right now at night. Dark moments heading into an uncertain future, but forging ahead nonetheless. Amboseli National Park, photographed by David Yarrow. It certainly feels like a decade of semiotic arousal when everything it seemed was a sign, a harbinger of some future radical disjuncture or cataclysmic upheaval. V.T. Chakarova tweeted this: "The year is 2020. And that took me, I've got a friend in Ethiopia who sent me a link to a movie I've never seen called La Grande Bellezza, La Festa. And when you see the scenes coming out of Italy and you watch this 3-minute clip, it's really quite extraordinary, the juxtaposition. The zeitgeist of a time is its defining spirit or its mood, and the zeitgeist of 2020 is simply indescribable. We know we'll get some good stories here. Where were you when Jonah Lomu did this in 1995? I remember watching that. He just arrived on the scene, and just watch it. It's the rugby All Blacks, and he looked so strong, like Mike Tyson did when he knocked out Trevor Berbick and said, "I cannot be beaten." And Jonah Lomu similarly could not be stopped. I'm in Italy on lockdown. This is a warning from the future. Violating the quarantine risks up to 12 years in prison, which sounds like a blessed relief because the joke's on us. We're already in prison. You'll all be locked down soon enough, whether by choice or by government decree. Some of you are probably quarantining yourselves already, receding into the dark squalor of your homes like Quasimodo, only emerging into sunlight for a frantic round of grocery shopping. Well, you're in luck. I'm a messenger from the imminent future, and I bring depressing lessons from the quarantine. Nightlife, this isn't Prague under Nazi occupation. There are no illegal underground quarantine raves where people sneeze on each other just to own the government. You're a walking, talking Chernobyl. Why the hell would anybody want to go near you anyway? Why would you even want to go outside? Outdoor surfaces, walls, metal railings, stone benches, wooden doors seem to glow with radiation as if tainted by the virus. And I went back to probably my favorite chapter in the Bible, Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind. And on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. The place where the streams flow, where they flow again, all things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Then I came across this tweet: currently watching a club DJ on Periscope with a bunch of people drinking and dancing, fully made up on Zoom, and I don't think even Asimov saw this future coming. As I said, the internet collapsed the world and shifted it into real time. Pope Francis delivered an extraordinary Urbi et Orbi blessing to an empty, rain-swept St. Peter's Square, a sign of the times. This is Madrid, Spain, from Mariam Hainine. It's really apocalyptic wherever you look. Turn up the volume and listen to the sound of a city in the grips of COVID-19, Laurie_Garrett. Every siren wailing is carrying more lives to an already overcrowded hospital, and every siren signifies an EMT crew risking their lives to save others. Political reflections: hundreds of thousands of Indian migrant labourers last week began long journeys on foot to get home, rendered homeless and jobless by PM Modi's COVID-19 lockdown. Getty Images, and this is a scene we're seeing replicated in Africa as well. This is the chart of cumulative deaths outside China. This was from yesterday, 23,000 deaths. Expect 250,000 deaths by mid-April, because deaths multiply by 10 in 14 days. Zorina Q. Dr. Fauci, you don't make the timeline. The virus makes the timeline, which seems to be President Trump's biggest challenge, understanding he can't bend the viral reality. At this rate, we will probably reach the 1 million confirmed cases milestone in the middle of this week, Remy GMI. At a rate of increase of 20% per day as for the last week, And actually, the real rate of increase is 33%, apparently. US cases of COVID-19 will be over 50 million by the end of April, Nouriel. Even with a mortality rate of 1%, only that will imply 500,000 dead people by that time. This will be the Easter gift of Trump to America, he says. I'd said previously it will be a Trump viricide. He is already behind the curve, and the curve is parabolic, exponential, and non-linear. And this can apply, it was written about the CCP, but it can also apply to the President of the United States. What is thriving, however, is all that ridiculous red culture and nauseating adulation that the system heaps on itself via shameless pro-party hacks who chirrup hosannas at every turn. The greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. I still have people comparing the flu and saying, look, there's hardly that many. That's not the point. You can't take a snapshot today. You've got to look at the graph. In nearly every country in the world, when the virus reaches 100 people, the number of cases begins to increase by 35% daily. At that rate, a country would reach 1 million cases just 31 days after reaching 100 cases. The curve flattens with social distancing. Check out Japan, but those numbers are also fictitious, South Korea and China, and I'll get to those Chinese numbers in a moment. Real world exponential growth looks like nothing, 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 then cluster, 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 then boom, epsilon theory, or Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point moment in an epidemic is when a virus reaches critical mass. It's the boiling point. It's the moment on the graph when the line starts to shoot straight upwards. Every 8 to 10 days, add a zero. 3rd March, 100 cases. 11th March, 1,000 cases. 19th March, 10,000 cases. 28th March, 100,000 cases. 7th April, 1 million cases. 17th April, 10 million cases. That's how exponential growth works. A reporter just asked Trump, can everyone who needs a ventilator get one? Trump, look, don't be a cutie pie. Okay. Which took me back to that quote by Jenna Friedman, a reality TV star botched the response to a global pandemic. And now we're all imprisoned in our homes and forced to watch him daily. More Americans should probably wear masks for protection. This is data points which shows that in the SARS outbreak in 2003, washing hands more than 10 times daily was 55% effective in stopping virus transmission, while wearing a mask was actually more effective at about 68%. WHO, if you do not have any respiratory symptoms such as fever, cough or runny nose, you do not need to wear a medical mask. Groucho Marx, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? Notice how smooth the Chinese curve is compared to the rest of the world. This only happens when the data is not collected, but rather fabricated under political order. Wuhan, endless queues for ashes of coronavirus dead casts doubt on numbers. Family members are seen waiting to bury the urns containing the ashes of their loved ones. About 45,000 urns will be distributed in Wuhan alone. The number of coronavirus deaths in China is deliberately underestimated. In the days of the peak of the epidemic, the crematory ovens worked for 19 hours a day. 16th of February, I was quoting Bei Dao, "Let me tell you, world, I do not believe. If 1,000 challenges lie beneath your feet, count me as number 1,001. I don't believe the sky is blue. I don't believe in thunder's echoes. I don't believe that dreams are false. I don't believe that death has no revenge. And of course, on that 16th of February, I picked up that article from Reddit where he said, Hubei province lies in ruins. There was one more set of doors, and beyond them lay what the corporal called the core. And it was there that I saw it, piles and piles of dead bodies stacked on top of one another, all the way to the ceiling. The corporal led me to the core. I cannot count how many there were, but it was many, many thousands. And in the midst of the piles of corpses was a kind of path. And I heard a roaring sound in the distance. I simply could not believe what lay at the end of that path in the core. It was an enormous furnace with great fires roaring within. And then he spoke a bit more, and of course I've shared with you the sulfur oxide satellite footage. Boris Johnson ready to blame coronavirus on China, that's the Mail Online. The question I have is, why was 10 Downing Street caught so flat-footed? Surely they had signals intelligence. Bill Gates was talking about it in October. It's very, very perplexing, that element. Bill Gates warned in October, kept telling us a pandemic was coming, and in October 2019 ran a simulation of a coronavirus pandemic. Just 3 months later, the real coronavirus pandemic began. As I said, the Malcolm Gladwell moment has definitively arrived. A V-shaped recovery, in my view, is a complete fantasy. Let's turn to oil, where we are currently at $22.06. It's been an incredible slump. There's no sugarcoating. It's going to be very difficult for producers. Oil and gas income for key producing countries will fall by 50 to 85% this year, to the lowest in more than 2 decades. Saudi Arabia needs an oil price of $80 a barrel. Markets are already flashing warning signs. Investors have pulled $83 billion from emerging markets in 2 months. Yields on government bonds of Angola, Nigeria, Iraq have soared to 30%, 12% and 14% respectively. S&P downgraded 9 oil-producing countries, including Saudi Arabia, Russia and Nigeria, Chad, Congo and Kurdistan. All have sizable loans against oil supplies from trading houses like Glencore and Trafigura. Harvard University economist Carmen Reinhart called the combination of falling crude prices and the coronavirus pandemic the kiss of death for indebted oil producers. The global oil market is broken, overwhelmed by an unmanageable surplus as virus lockdowns cascade through world's largest economies. Onshore tanks in many markets are full, forcing traders to store excess oil in idle supertankers. Refineries are starting to shut down because nobody needs the fuels they produce in physical oil markets. Barrels already changing hands for less than $10. And in a few landlocked markets, producers are paying consumers to take away their crude. The world normally uses 100 million barrels per day, and traders and analysts reckon as much as a quarter of that has disappeared in just a few weeks. The immediate problem is a lack of storage in the right places, with demand running 20 million barrels a day below supply. The world won't have enough tanks to store the surplus in 2 or 3 months. CEO of Frontline said on Friday he'd never known such demand to hire ships for long-term storage. Traders could put 100 million barrels at sea, he estimated, but even that accounts for just a few days' oversupply. Air travel has cut jet fuel use by up to 75%, or almost 5 million barrels a day. Gasoline, they need 9 million barrels a day in the US. 22 million barrels a day hit in April is the estimate. Surprise perhaps is that benchmark futures are still trading as high as they are. And so I expect a drop very soon below $20 in point of fact. And that's what I was writing about on the 22nd of March when I said we're moving from a world of hyper-connectedness to a world of quarantine. And the price of crude oil is perfectly correlated to that hard, sudden stop. This is a chart from high-low_SF. I think we're headed below 20. Kapuscinski, oil creates the illusion of a changed life, life without work, life for free. Oil is a resource that anesthetizes thought, blurs vision, corrupts. Oil kindles extraordinary emotion, since oil is above all a great temptation. It is the temptation of ease, wealth, strength, fortune, power. It is a filthy, foul-smelling liquid that squirts obligingly up into the air and falls back to earth as a rustling shower of money. Hunter S. Thompson, there is no honest way to explain it because the only people who really know where it is, this is the edge, are the ones who have gone over. Regime implosion is coming to a place near you. Gold, I think it's a bull flag. I see a lot of chartists who are saying it's some ABC downward trade, but I think it's being played around with it, and let me explain. We're currently at 1612.75. I said on the 24th of February, a little bit early, that I would venture gold is correlated to the coronavirus, which is set to turn parabolic and is already non-linear and exponential. I stand by that. We had a big sell-off, but we've rebounded. M2 money supply only surged like this one other time in history, October 2008. We've yet to hear of institutions failing. Tavi Costa. Look at this video capture of the gold price action over 2 days from Thursday to Friday, 1 minute chart. It illustrates just how mad the price action has been. You've got a massive battle going on. Check the swings and price range. How can us mere humans trade this? Buy it with a very deep stop. There's no gold report, zero hedge. COMEX report exposes conditions behind physical crunch. While the demand for gold has been soaring as a safe haven asset amid the multiple global crises we're currently facing, forced paper gold liquidation as leverage funds scramble to cover margin calls, and unprecedented logistical disruptions created a frantic hunt for actual bars of gold. And then there's a very good explanation as to what's going on. In regard to real physical gold delivery, the situation was even worse for bullion bankers than the situation with the real physical silver delivery, which likely has given rise to physical gold supply problems at the current time. Ole Hansen, who I follow, he's quoting in his statements that gold is not in the right places. Did he unwittingly reveal that the reported COMEX warehouse data is fraudulent? Massive price decoupling between physical and paper gold prices, which is signaling a physical shortage, I believe. This week will be pivotal for paper gold. The smackdown accompanied by CME margin increases were designed to force specs longs to close. Instead, they stood for delivery. It has failed spectacularly on the April 20 contract. A massive bear squeeze is in progress and should continue. That's McLeod Finance. And I responded saying, we've seen widening bid-offer spreads. We've seen the silver, is this a silver bunker hunt redux? Where we've had raising of margins. And I was asking, do you see a risk that we're going to see more of that? He believes that the real price of gold is closer to 1,800, but lack of physical and paper market crisis could drive it higher. I agree with him. And it takes me back to the story of the brothers Bunker Hunt who tried to corner the silver market. Silver Thursday, where they were forced to sell all their silver due to changes made to exchange rules regarding the purchase of commodities on margin. That story's on Rich Wrap-Ups. Most traders buy and sell paper. The actual stuff represented by that paper is delivered to someone else. Hunt wanted the silver. He chartered 3 707 jet aircraft to haul the metal to warehouses in Switzerland and hired a dozen sharpshooting cowboys to provide security. They broke the ascent by basically outlawing the buying of silver. Only liquidation orders would be accepted. It's almost criminal what they did. The three Bunker Hunt brothers had $4.5 billion in silver holdings, $3.5 billion of it in profit, but they didn't have $134 million in cash, and they were pushed into bankruptcy. Panic buying bullion, this is Sputnik. As I said, again, I said it on the 22nd of March, I believe gold will turn viral to the upside, and I'm looking for $2,000. They're going to do massive money printing. This is a tweet from Scott Burke 777, the print shop. So as I said, I think we're going to see a massive move. Turning to Africa, Kaneshi Station, folks leaving the countryside. Why? Most of their expenditures are daily rent, daily bathing fees, daily roadside food, so they need daily income. If they're in Accra, in the village, many expenses stop, and that's why you're seeing this practically biblical exodus out of the cities. Officials warn Africa is breaking the glass moment. This is David Pilling in the Financial Times. International actors need to take drastic action if the world's poorest continent is to avoid a human and economic catastrophe. Ken Ofori-Atta, Ghana's finance minister, told the Financial Times. Bill Gates last month warned the pandemic could kill 10 million Africans if it were allowed to rip through the continent. And Imperial College London published a study saying that if governments failed to act, the virus would claim 40 million lives worldwide. Charlie Robertson, African economies suffering a double hit, a collapse in revenue and a need to ramp up spending, both on emergency health measures and to counter the economic impact of lockdown measures. Without it, we would have been in tatters completely. So I wrote about this severally, COVID-19 in a rolling sudden stop. I said the negative feedback loop is double-sided. One side is an overwhelmed healthcare system. The other side is the economy. How much do we need to haircut sub-Saharan African remittances? I was estimating about 25%. I'm calculating sub-Saharan Africa will contract in 2020. And I concluded by saying it would not be an exaggeration to say we're staring into the abyss of a zombie apocalypse. This is a shot in Kampala as the lockdown began, with armed forces police having a field day caning the unsuspecting public. Essentially, we know viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. I wrote in the Africa Report a few weeks ago how debt, virus, and locusts are creating a perfect storm for Africa. And that we're looking in the rear view mirror when we look at these data points that we're getting at the moment. And I conclude we're past the point of no return. Fly Ethiopian has ground its fleet for the first time in 75 years. All our airlines are no longer going concerns. Angola has a C rating reflecting a massive strain on the country, is under lower oil prices. The rand fell to a record low of 1792. This was predicted in another article I wrote earlier in the year. Kenya, rough sleepers of Nairobi. Tourism, I said, is stopped out in 2020. Serena Hotels has announced that 10 properties will be closed until June 15th, 2020. Serena has a beautiful set of hotels. One's at Lake El Muntaita, which is lovely. I did an interview with Mahmoud Jan Mohammed, its CEO, a while back, but it still applies. The Serena, I have fabulous memories of it from Mombasa, where they had the beach hotel and where Mahmoud was then the manager. I was then a teenager and remember losing my heart to a girl who would beat me at table tennis in a bikini. The table tennis table is still there. The Polana in Maputo, in my view, is the jewel in the crown. And with that, I shall take my leave. Thank you for listening.